Hi, and welcome back to the SAT2 U.S. History Exam Review. Today we're going to be talking about the 1930s, which will consist of the Great Depression and FDR's New Deal. So let's start off by talking about some of the weaknesses in that seemingly booming 1920s economy that sort of set the stage for the Great Depression. First of all, we had high tariffs, then stock market speculation, which is going to be risky lending, and it's going to be sort of a gamble happening in the stock market increasingly. Also, there is an overproduction happening and actually an underconsumption because actually most of the population could not afford luxuries. So the growth that was happening and the prosperity in the markets was actually imbalanced, and it wasn't actually being distributed to every sector of society, and therefore we had this sense of underconsumption. Then war debts in Europe resulted in less foreign trade for us, so less of an opportunity to sell to those countries that are rebuilding themselves after World War I in Europe. Then also this easy credit to go along with the stock market speculation was going to make borrowing a lot easier. And again, that sense of risky lending was happening during this time period, and it was increasing a lot, sort of snowballing. So then borrowers were eventually unable to pay back their loans when the banks and the government realized that things were getting a little bit out of control, and that led to financial collapse for a lot of banks and individuals. So on top of that, we have depressed agricultural prices because actually there's a lot of surplus that's being raised throughout the farming and agricultural sector, and you can see actually abandoned farmhouses were pretty common actually in the Midwest in the late 20s. Then again, this idea of unequal distribution of wealth that led to that sense of underconsumption. So you can see that with 5% of the population actually was providing for the investment capital, and they also held the majority of purchasing power for the entire nation. So just 5% of the population. It's not a very balanced way to grow an economy. And then we also actually had a weak banking system. Even though we were trying to make a lot of reforms, we were really just scratching the surface. And actually, the banking system was composed of many small, mismanaged banks. So the stock market crash of 1929 is the first great financial panic that sort of begins this downward trend in our economy and eventually will lead to the Great Depression. So the economic bubble that was sort of being created by all of this speculation and easy lending in the 1920s was going to be bursting by October 1929, and people were